Hello there guys, Billybae10K here, bringing you another video. Today we're going to be reviewing the Monster Hunter Rise demo, currently available until January 31st, from the perspective of someone who has almost no experience with the Monster Hunter franchise. I've played up to the second unlockable area in Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii, when I was like 11 or so, and that's pretty much all of my experience in a nutshell. In my eyes, demos should satisfy two different goals. One, appeal to new players who have never tried out a series before but want to get into it, and two, appeal to returning players with optional harder challenges for series veterans, showing them what's new in this iteration with moves and controls. And historically, Monster Hunter demos have succeeded in fulfilling the latter goal, as they are often structured around tough monster encounters, where the goal is to pick a weapon, head out into battle, and take down whatever monsters come your way. You don't get the armor customizations, the hub and its various activities, or a real tutorial. You're thrown right into the action. But for the former goal, new hunters have noted that the demos for this franchise are not friendly. They don't ease you in, they chuck you in at the deep end and say, have fun, don't drown. Now, from my time with Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii, I remember that game was actually fairly good at introducing you to the mechanics that you need to succeed in your hunts, sending you on smaller fetch quests to get you used to the Monster Hunter gameplay loop, while allowing you to test out weapons and builds to your heart's content. I'm sure the main release of Rise will also have this curve, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Will the Monster Hunter Rise demo be able to ease in a new hunter like me, or will I be overwhelmed by the intricacies of this franchise's long history? Let's begin, shall we? Straight away, I want to say that I really love the menu screen. The aesthetic of the village song maidens performing was pleasant to listen to, and really sets the mood for the style and tone that Rise is going for. It's strikingly different from past games in the franchise, especially when you compare it to the last game, Monster Hunter World, with that Japanese folklore aesthetic. You then load into a menu with 4 different missions: slay a great Izuchi, slay a Mizutsune, basic training quest, and wyvern riding training quest. You can perform the training quests as much as you want, however you can only try out the main hunting quests up to 30 times before the demo locks you out. Once you select a mission, you will be presented with 14 different weapon types, each coming with their own customized hunter, and you're sent off to fight some monsters. Already, I have an issue with the demo. You're not able to look at the movesets of these weapons before selecting them. For a veteran player, this isn't an issue, as you'll have the experience from past games to guide you, but for new players, this is a lot of choice without a lot of guidance. The only way to view the movesets of the weapons you choose is to enter the mission with your chosen weapon, navigate to the hunter's notes, and then look at your weapon moveset. And even then, it's a lot of reading, which is fine if you're someone who learns through text, but some people learn through visual indicators. So many modern games include brief videos of moves being used, such as in Ghost of Tsushima, Devil May Cry, and many others. With how intense the reading and menus are in Monster Hunter, having these visuals to accompany the various moves in the hunter's notes would have streamlined the process of learning each weapon. You also have a page dedicated to combos you might want to learn, and look, I was overwhelmed completely and utterly. And that's just for our weapon moveset. You're expected to find and fight monsters, defeat them, take their loot, and return to your village with the spoils of your hunt. Monster Hunter Rise, and this series in general, relies on slower, more methodical combat. You can do cool moves with your weapons, they're all comically large and anime as fuck, but clever positioning, knowing when to dodge roll, when to sheath your weapon and run, when to use your wire bug, as well as how to manage your various stats and items are the real challenge of these games. And the demo does an awful job of explaining all of this. The basic training quest teaches you about the wire bug, your new Palamute companions, and the endemic life that can provide usable items, heal or buff your character, or even debuff your enemies. And this is all fine and dandy for veterans as they know how a Monster Hunter game plays, but for new players, it's not good enough because series staple features and mechanics aren't even touched upon. I felt alienated from the get-go, like I was trying to get involved in something that didn't really want me there. You can say, go look up guides, check out the community, and that's all fine and good. Monster Hunter has always been a series that heavily involves a multiplayer aspect, but not every gamer is willing to enter a new community to try and learn about a game they don't know if they'll even enjoy in the long run. The point of a demo is to convince players to try your game. And that's my main issue with the Rise demo. It doesn't treat new players well, and with a game this complicated to play, that's a genuine issue. I'm not one to get overwhelmed by in-game information. I like to think I can pick up on how to play a game fairly naturally, but for some reason, I just found myself bogged down by how much was being asked and thrown at me. It was information overload, but the only way to get through that was to play. So, I made a plan. I decided to do a quest with each weapon so I could get a feel for the various movesets, what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, and whether there'd be a playstyle that feels comfortable for me, which meant having to play the demo at minimum 14 times to get experience with every weapon. I decided after the first 2 to 3 weapons to focus on the intermediate mission against the Mizutsune, because there were 3 different major monsters to hunt down in that mission as opposed to the beginner mission's 2 major monsters, so it would be more time effective. Then, for the ranged weapons, I swapped back to the beginner mission so I'd have an easier time with the moveset, and because at that point, I was fatigued. This took place over the course of 3 days, and here is how it went. The first 3 weapons I tried out were the greatsword, the longsword, and the dual blades. This was where I had the toughest time with the weapons, because not only did I need to learn the movesets of these weapons, I had to adapt to the entire game's flow. I didn't know how to effectively dodge attacks. I had no sense as to when to fall back, when to use items, etc., etc. It made these first few hunts incredibly brutal. I knew you could buff your stamina by eating meat, I knew you needed to keep your weapon sharp with a whetstone, I knew about the new mechanics like riding on the palamutes, and that was about it. I didn't even know you could look up the weapon movesets until my 3rd hunt with the dual blades, which meant I was going in blind with my first 2 hunts with the greatsword and longsword. I wish there had been a prompt upon starting the hunts to tell players, hey, you can check the weapon moveset here if you're new. It would have gone a long way towards helping new players adapt to the various weapons on offer. Because of this, my time with the great and long swords was not very fun. The greatsword was slow and sluggish, I still wasn't used to positioning at the time, and I've always been more comfortable with faster movesets. I could tell I wasn't using the weapon correctly, but at the same time I had no way of knowing what the correct way to use the weapon was, because the game never gave me that info. I was constantly being bombarded with attacks from fast enemies, unable to get my own hits off, and I still didn't fully understand the wirebug attacks yet, so yeah. And as I said, I'm not looking up any external guides or references as I want to get all the information I can from the demo itself. The longsword was better, I vibed with the moveset more because it was faster. I did miss a lot of my attacks though, as I still hadn't learned how to properly position myself. I'm so used to snappy games where you can attack, then turn, attack again, whereas in Monster Hunter, you're locked into the directions you attack in. It's slower, required more thought from the player, and I respect that, even if it took me a while to learn. The dual blades were where I realized, oh, you can look at movesets. They seemed like a lot of fun, the novelty of demon mode was intriguing, but my idiotic ass completely forgot how to trigger the forms, so for the first third of the hunt, I was underusing my abilities. Demon mode was fast-paced, frenetic, but the dual blades required you to get in close with your enemies, and that's normal, but the very short reach made them a little too above my skill level. I felt like I was taking too much damage and not giving enough back. Perhaps with practice, I could get a little better with them. I also used the dual blades to fight the Mizutsune for the first time, and, well, it killed me. Hard. I decided to go back to the beginner quest for the sword and shield. I thought this would be the most basic weapon of the bunch, and in a way, yes it is. But I found myself really enjoying the sword and shield. The moveset was simple to understand, and there was a really good wirebug move that flurried your weapons around you that I basically spammed to get results. It was just that good. You'll notice the movesets I enjoyed the most tend to have spammable wire bug attacks that just get the job done. I can't say I really used the guard mechanic all that much for any of the movesets involving a shield, it just wasn't a part of my playstyle, so please keep that in mind when you listen to my thoughts on other shield-based movesets. I'm clearly not using them correctly. Next up, the hammer. From this weapon on, my goal was to slay the Mizutsune, without regard for the Rathian or the Great Azuchi also present in the intermediate hunt. So I went and took on the Mizutsune, and I'd say the hammer felt just like the greatsword for me. Very heavy, very hard to maneuver with the added pain of me trying to use one of the wire bug moves only to constantly get bashed out of the animation by the monster. At this point, I was getting frustrated, I was doing damage where I could, I was starting to learn the Mizutsune's pattern, but I wasn't able to clinch the win. 3 feints later, the hammer and its slow moveset was put to the side. The main takeaway I had from these early weapons is that I feel like I'd be better with them now after having used all of the weapons in the demo, because I did start to learn some of that game awareness that allowed me to get more out of my abilities and movesets. That being said, this is a chronicle of my experiences, so I have to point out that the going was rough at the start. This was a turning point though, as I was about to discover one of my 2 favorite weapons in the demo. The hunting horn is my baby, I love it. I love that they have taken the idea of a bard and absolutely ran with it. The wire bug moves are powerful, the base attacks are strong, the buffs you can place on yourself are game-changing. I felt like I had hit that middle ground of a powerful weapon that also allowed me to keep some speed and movement, which is exactly my preferred playstyle. And this showed in my hunt, as I was, for the first time, able to defeat the Mizutsune, and it felt very good. I understand now why people are so satisfied with these games when it comes to a successful hunt and defeating those monsters. It felt so good to overcome the Mizutsune's bubbles and take a win. It doesn't change the fact that I was still bothered by how beginner-unfriendly the demo is, but I could make peace with the fact that I was getting better. So with that, I picked up the lance, and I decided next to try and tackle the Rathian. With its poisonous tail and intimidating demeanor, it felt like the next step up after the Mizutsune. Sadly, the lance was not the weapon for me. Slow movement, a massive shield that I just never ended up using, and a pokey stabby stabby moveset that just didn't click. I don't know, maybe shields in this game are fantastic, but the game never gave me that info, and when I blocked attacks, it didn't feel as intuitive as dodging or running from them instead. I prefer a more active playstyle. That being said, whoever decided that swapping out the massive shield for a fucking gun lance is a genius and needs a raise. I had a lot of fun with the gun lance. It felt easier to wield, the wire bug attacks felt intuitive and great for slamming down the Rathian's face. And this was also when I started to learn that dodge rolling isn't the only way to avoid attacks. You can run around many attacks in this game by simply holding the R button, sheathing your weapon, and nigerundayo, Smokey. That being said, the worm stake cannon move. I'm still not sure how to perform that attack. I followed the instructions, but I couldn't tell if I'd actually performed the move or not. Another instance of me wishing there had been visual aids to accompany these movesets. I almost beat the Rathian here, but I lost at pretty much the final hurdle and the quest was a failure. But I was determined. So, I picked up the switch axe. This was my weapon. I don't know why, but the switch axe was just perfect for me. The moveset, comfortable to use, easy to position. The ability to change your axe into a sword, fantastic. And the zero-sum discharge move decimated the monsters I faced. It was like using a Bloodborne weapon, but in Monster Hunter. Now sadly, I didn't record the first half of this hunt due to an error in my Elgato capture card forcing me to start recording halfway through. As such, you missed out on me cutting the Rathian's tail off and giving it the 1-2. But you do get to see me kill it. Oh, and then I went and killed the Great Azuchi and the Mizutsune in one run with just a few minutes to spare because I loved this weapon that much. For once, I felt like I was the one in control. I had power, I had experience, I had a cool weapon that reminded me almost of the Monado from Xenoblade in terms of design when it becomes a sword, and I was in love. It's my favorite weapon, and I could see myself using it and the hunting horn in the main game. So, with 5 more weapons to use, I had already beaten all 4 major monsters that appear in the demo. Normally, that's where I would be content to stop, but for this review, I wanted to try all 14 weapons out. And here is where I suspect I'm going to sadden the Monster Hunter community, because I absolutely hated my time with the Charge Blade. I went into this weapon thinking it'd be similar to the Switch Axe, since they were both weapons that changed from sword to axe and vice versa, but while the Switch Axe was fun, the Charge Blade was a micromanaging nightmare. It has an overheat mechanic tied to the sword form, meaning you need to use powerful axe moves to lower that energy level. And I just couldn't get my head around lowering that energy. I'd use the axe, but assumedly I'd be using the wrong moves and the wrong time, and I'm sure this is a fantastic weapon, but it is not beginner-friendly and left a very sour taste in my mouth. It doesn't help that I came straight from the Switch Axe, which was so much fun to use. Whatever came next was always going to struggle at the end of the day, and struggle it did. I couldn't even kill the Great Azuchi with it. It was pitiful. It's the only weapon in the entire demo that I couldn't pull off a kill with. Damn. The Insect Glaive was next, and that was weird. The insect mechanics were unique, but I didn't feel I fully understood how to utilize the moveset, mainly when it came to the firing attack, the ZR arm move. I just didn't understand what it did, or what it was. I barely used it, and I feel like I'm missing an integral part of this moveset due to a lack of clear explanation. That being said, I killed the Rathian with the glaive, because while I may have been confused about the insect stuff, the other half of this weapon was, as we sometimes refer to in wrestling, the flippy shit. I flipped and flopped everywhere, spinning through the air, vaulting over the Rathian. I was like that slippery cockroach you just couldn't stamp out, and that was incredibly fun. Overall, I'm curious about the Insect Glaive, and I would like to look into it more, but that's about it. For the last 3 weapons, as they were ranged, I decided to go back to the beginner mission so I could see their movesets against easier opponents, and to honestly just give myself a break, because I was starting to hit my I'm kinda done with this point. Of the 3, I'd say I enjoyed the bow the most in terms of its mechanics. It felt the most interesting to work with. I liked the different arrows, abilities, and coatings. The heavy bowgun comes next, as the armor looked very Doomslayer-like, and I thought that was very cool. And the Gatling gun mechanic, that was so much fun once I figured out how to use it. Although it took me a few minutes to realize how to actually fire the special ammo once it was locked and loaded. The light bowgun was fine, but it didn't pack the same punch as the heavy bowgun, or have the status coatings that made the bow interesting to use. Regardless, all 3 of these weapons felt very supportive. It was clear that, in the case of single player, I don't think you're expected to use them. They felt more multiplayer focused. Easy to use though. So, 14 weapons later, multiple monsters slain. How do I feel about the demo overall? I enjoyed what I played. The monster designs are top-notch, the music is actually really good. I kept getting flashbacks to the Forest Kingdom in Nier Automata when battling the monsters, and the Mizutsune's personal theme was a bop. You've probably heard it in the background of this video at some point. The aesthetics work really well. I love the ruined shrines and mountains you explore in this demo, and the new mechanics like the endemic life, the palamutes, wyvern riding, even if not everything you ride is a wyvern, why wasn't this called monster riding? And the wirebug all work fantastically. Although, some weapons have these weird wirebug counter moves that I found I could never quite get the timing for, which made me sour on those weapons because why play with a weapon that has a really hard to time counter mechanic? Wanted to get that one in there before we wrap this up. Now, the main game, when it releases, will definitely be friendlier to newcomers, I don't doubt that, but that's not the point of this video. This demo, what I'm reviewing, was not beginner-friendly, and continues the trend that Monster Hunter demos have adhered to in terms of not being very approachable, which is disappointing. You can still have a beginner-friendly demo that keeps the challenge for veteran players. Being able to view movesets for weapons before selecting them in the menu, for example, or my constant requests for visual aids that accompany the weapon controls, maybe even going the extra mile and including a tutorial that changes depending on the weapon you pick, so you can learn the basics of each weapon in a developer-intended environment. They could have gone a long way. I enjoyed Rise's demo, but I worry it's just too alienating for new players who aren't willing or able to put the time in to learn these mechanics within 30 hunts, without any form of real tutorial or guidance. Rise will be a great game though, and assuming I can afford it, I will probably be picking the game up myself when I have the chance. I would say, play the demo. Just be aware it's not as easy to pick up and play as you might expect. You've got until the end of the month to download it. Monster Hunter Rise will be released on the 26th of March 2021 and is available for pre-order on the eShop at the moment. Thank you everyone for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Consider checking out my previous videos. The first is my gaming journey of 2020. I share a lot of different games and experiences, and I'm proud of that video. The second is a review of the Nintendo Switch arcade shooter Rife, which by now should be released on the eShop. It's great fun, the developers are very kind. I'd like to get the review out there. So see you guys next time, and goodbye. Monster Hunter community, please don't kill me.